Right, good evening, everyone. My name is Mitesh Bimjani, and I'm founder of Success at School. We are hosting this webinar where you'll learn some last-minute tips to perfect. Where you'll be able to help. We've got some last-minute tips to help perfect your UCAS form or your child's UCAS form. Fortunately for you, it's not me providing this information. For that, we have Rebecca Bowen. Rebecca is a senior student recruitment officer at the University of South Wales and has been in this position for the last 13 years. Rebecca is definitely the right person to give this advice. Just some information about the University of South Wales, where Rebecca's from. One fact I bet you didn't know, the University of South Wales is the largest university in Wales with campuses in Newport, Cardiff and Pontypridd. Their courses are developed alongside employers and industry experts, giving their students an advantage when it comes to finding a graduate job. They have a team to help provide higher education information to students, teachers, parents and carers. We will provide contact details at the end if you want to know how you can access some of this support. Rebecca's going to take over shortly, but I'd ask you to write questions you have in the chat box and we will go through them in the Q&A session at the end. Rebecca, over to you.
Fantastic, thanks Mitesh. It's a real pleasure to be with you this evening. So I'm going to go through some slides for the next sort of 25 minutes probably or so, and then that'll leave us plenty of time for questions at the end. So please do make use of the chat box function, and we'll come to that at the end of the presentation, but it might be that some of your questions get covered in the slides I'm going to present to you. So I'm going to talk to you about things that you could be doing now ahead of the UCAS deadline, which we all know is next Wednesday, the 26th of January. And I'm going to talk to you then about what happens after you've submitted that application, what you can expect. Okay, so just to give you a bit of context then, most of you, maybe not all of you, but most of you will be thinking about making your application via UCAS. Just to give you a bit of context, the UCAS website is certainly the one-stop shop for searching courses and universities in the UK. You'll find on the UCAS website over 35,000 course options at over 400 higher education institutions, which includes further education colleges that might offer higher education qualifications as well, giving students more than 50,000 options, which can feel incredibly overwhelming. And depending where you are in this process, you might have gone through that process and you might have at points felt a little bit overwhelmed with all the choice that's available. In terms of the timeline then, so usually the main application window is open now, opens in September, closes in January every year. And then you've got the period where universities make offers and students choose whether to accept them and what's going to be their first and second choice, and we'll talk a little bit about that a bit later. So that's October time, depending on when you submit your application into the summer, so into May. And then we've got results day and that process called clearing. So we'll cover this, be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but we'll cover all stages of the process this evening. In terms of choosing a course then, just very briefly, because I know that some of you will be much further along in this process and might have already chosen your course. It's important you choose something you're interested in, something that you're going to enjoy. And we all know that we're more likely to stick at something that we're passionate about. So important that it's aligned to your interests, to your passions. Career plans, so thinking about what careers you might be interested in and whether you need a particular qualification to get into those careers. Some of the more obvious ones might be something like nursing, teaching, social work, those kind of areas where you need a specific qualification to pursue careers in those areas. You might be thinking about a single honours, so studying one subject at university, or you might be considering a joint honours programme where you study two subjects and you spend equal amounts of time studying both and then graduate with a qualification in both of those subjects, then a joint honours qualification. It's important to remember that there's lots of flexibility and lots of choice. Depending on, you might be at school or college at the moment, you might have left school or college, and you might be in the workplace, but you'll never have had so much choice in terms of what you want to do next. So that if depends, whatever your interest, whatever your career aspiration, there is a course out there for you. And it's important to remember as well that no two courses are the same. I'm sure when you've been doing your research, you might have typed in business management into the UCAS search box and thousands of options have come up. Important to remember that lots of universities offer business management, the University of South Wales included, but the course content things like entry requirements, the grades that we need for you to get a place on that course could be very, very different. So it's important that you're looking at all of the information that's provided. And in terms of searching universities, the key thing, researching universities, the key thing that students think about is the distance from home. Sometimes they want to move as far away as they can from home. Sometimes they want to be sort of close to home, or they might even want to live at home and travel to a local university. Sometimes students want to move far enough away that if they want to come home on the weekend, they can, but they certainly feel like they've moved out, they've got that independence, they're living in halls of residence or at their chosen university. Reputation. There's lots of information out there about universities' reputation, so I'd encourage you to use that information alongside all of the other things we've just talked about in terms of enjoyment, in terms of career plans, etc. There's different types of universities available. So Mitesh, in his introduction, explained that we're a campus university with sites across South Wales. Some universities are city universities, so they have buildings within a particular city where students can travel from building to building as part of their sort of university education, attending lectures and things. Obviously, like schools and colleges, universities can vary a lot in terms of size. Their academic facilities can vary, and their obviously a student's social and recreational requirements are important. Obviously, the key feature is going to be spending time in the lecture theatre, spending time doing your university work, but you will have free time. What are you going to do with that free time? What facilities are available? How are you going to spend those hours when you're not doing your university work? In terms of research then, we appreciate that it's been a pretty mixed bag in terms of open days for the past sort of nearly 2 years in terms of face-to-face and online. Thankfully, universities are in a position now to begin to move towards face-to-face provision, in-person events. Again, and there's no better way to kind of do that research, to find out more about a university than by attending an open day. And what I would say is it's not too late to attend an open day. So even with the deadline approaching next Wednesday, lots of universities are running open days this term. Even if you've made your application, you can still go along to an open day and find out more about what's on offer, meet current students, meet the staff, see the facilities, see the accommodation, and get a good idea of what it might be like to be a student at that university. We heard at the start that we've got a team at the university who runs school and college events. This is true of all universities. So we run activities for schools to come onto campus, to experience the facilities, to meet staff and get a better sense of what university is all about. We've got webinars like this one, and I'm delighted that so many of you have joined us this evening. We've got HE fairs run by a number of providers such as UCAS, What Uni, UK University Search, so opportunities usually for students to attend with their school or college, visit university stands, collect that information that they need and ask those all important questions. And obviously university websites are a great source of information about courses, about provision, about scholarships, all of those really key things. And social media, all students are on social media, all universities are on social media, so an opportunity to see what universities are saying about themselves and what other students are saying about those universities as well. In terms of making an application then, apologies if you're aware of this already, but for 2022 entry onwards, so for this September, students need to create a UCAS account using the UCAS hub. If you're at school or college, this application will be linked to your school or college. So usually your UCAS coordinator, your head of sixth form, your careers advisor, whoever's responsible for it at your school or college will have oversight of all the applications. You need to provide an email address, password, personal ID. I would encourage you, just if we're talking about hints and tips this evening, I would encourage you to keep an eye out on that junk email folder, making sure that you haven't missed anything important from UCAS or from universities just because it's inadvertently ended up in that junk email folder. So please make sure you're checking it regularly during this process. In terms of what you share with UCAS and then subsequently with universities, contact information, your chosen universities and courses, your grades, including predicted grades, a teacher reference, this is if you're at school or college. Obviously, if you're applying independently, this might be an employer reference, a character reference, and then the personal statement. I'm going to talk really briefly about the personal statement. We've got talks at the university, we do sort of 45 minutes on this usually, so I'm not going to do that this evening. Just a bit of an overview really, and it might be that some of you have finished your personal statement and you're in those real final stages of submitting your application. It might be, and I'm not going to ask you to tell me if you are, but it might be that you haven't quite finished your personal statement yet and you're adding those finishing touches. So hopefully the next 5 minutes or so will give you a bit of a hand if you aren't quite there with your personal statement yet. The key thing is that we want to know from your personal statement, there's two key things. We want to know why you're applying, so why should we offer you a place on this course, and why you've chosen this course. We saw in my first slide, we're talking about 35,000 courses, 50,000 options. Why have you decided on this course in particular? The length of the personal statement is 47 lines of text or 4,000 characters. And at the beginning of this process, I always tell students, well, that sounds like an awful lot of work, an awful lot of writing. But in reality, that's one side of A4. So more often than not, students are cutting things out of their personal statement rather than having to add things in, because 4,000 characters is the absolute limit that you can include in your personal statement. It's important that your personal statement is unique. So we see a lot of personal statements that start with things like, I want to study this course because it's interesting. I'm fascinated by this course. I've always been passionate about a career in whatever subject that might be. Try and be unique, try and say something interesting, and of course, be honest. I can't see any of you, I can't hear any of you, but all the students on this call will have more than enough to say in a personal statement. There's no need to make things up, there's no need to say things that aren't true. And the purpose of the personal statement is it gives universities more information about you. Without your personal statement, you're a list of subjects, you're a list of grades and your contact details. So it gives you the opportunity to talk to universities and tell us why you're the right person for the course and why you've chosen it. And what are you going to do with that course? What are you going to do next? In terms of what we're looking for, we're looking for an understanding of the subject in the course. We don't expect you to be experts. You're at the very start of this journey and looking at higher education and courses, but we certainly expect to see that you've done your research. Maybe you've attended an open day, maybe you've spent hours trawling university websites, that you understand what's expected of a student who chooses to study that subject or that course. We want to see a passion, we want to see enthusiasm. Students often worry that their personal statement content is a little bit cheesy, and sometimes it is a little bit cheesy, but it's about sort of demonstrating to us that you're passionate, that you're enthusiastic, that you really want to be a part of this course at that university. We really want to hear about the skills that you've got, and we know that students who are in school or college will be familiar with having to talk about the skills that they've got, the skills that they'd like to develop. And universities are no different. We want to hear about those skills that students possess, the skills that they've been building during their time at school or college, and how they intend to kind of build on those again at university. And confirming that they've got experience. Now, we appreciate that getting work experience has been challenging during the last couple of years, but I would encourage students to think about the experience that they might have and framing other experience. So work experience doesn't have to mean a week at a GP surgery. It doesn't have to mean a week at a solicitor's office. It could be attending a series of webinars. It could be reading a series of articles or getting involved with something at their school or college. So when they're talking about experience, we do like to see experience of the subject area. It gives them more to say, and we would always encourage students to take advantage of any opportunities that are offered to them, because it looks so good on a personal statement. Some of the skills I mentioned, there's some on the screen now that we like to hear about, we like to read about in those personal statements. You can see communication there right in the middle, quite big letters. Students, in my experience, like talking about their communication skills and team working as well. I would encourage students to vary the skills that they talk about. I've read many drafts of personal statements over the years where students might have had 5 or 6 really good experiences, and for every single one they tell us how that's helped build their communication skills. Vary the skills that you talk about. You've got more than one skill, and so make sure that you're including them and giving us examples of those skills as well. And if you remember one thing from this webinar this evening, I'd encourage you to remember this. So this is the personal statement ABC. This has come from UCAS. It has been around for a very long time, even longer than I've been working in schools and colleges liaison. So the personal statement ABC is activity, benefit, course. And we encourage students when they're writing their personal statement, when they're drafting ideas, getting stuff down on paper, to remember the personal statement ABC. So what do we mean by activity, benefit, course? As a student, what have I done, achieved, read, experienced, listened to, watched? What have I done? What's the activity? How did I benefit from this activity? So what did I gain by doing this activity? And that could be a skills gain. I've developed skills in a certain area. I've built on experience. I've built on my knowledge. So how have I benefited from this experience? And then how does this relate to the course that I'm applying for? So, okay, I've done this great thing. I've developed these great skills. How is this going to help me when I'm studying at university? And we encourage students to break down all of their experiences like this when they're writing their personal statement. And according to UCAS, good personal statements talk about activities. This is a long list of the things that I've done. Better personal statements can talk about the things that I've done and also the benefit to me. And then the best personal statements are able to talk about what I've done, how I've benefited, and how this is relevant to the course. And just very briefly, I'm the captain of the school football team, hockey team, netball team. I've developed my interpersonal and team working skills, relevant to business studies because being able to communicate effectively is an important skill when working on group projects. You can see how those three things fit together. Once it's written, I'd encourage students always to check the spelling and grammar. There's no excuse for spelling and grammar errors in a personal statement. Giving it to someone else to read if we've got any teachers or parents or carers on the call, reading over personal statements, giving constructive feedback. Reading out loud, so reading it to yourself, often you can get lost in all the words on the page. So reading it out loud, sometimes students feel a bit uncomfortable with this, but sometimes I encourage them to maybe record themselves on their smartphones or on another device and listen back to it, because sometimes the words on the page, when you spend enough time on it, lose a bit of meaning. But if you listen to it back, you'll be able to spot those places where maybe you've said something that isn't quite relevant, or maybe you've repeated yourself quite a few times. You can hear that then when you listen back to it. And just very briefly, what to avoid: avoiding cliches and quotes. Read a lot of personal statements that start with a Martin Luther King quote, for example, and think of completely avoiding cliches and quotes. We want to hear what you've got to say. We don't need to hear from famous figures, famous faces. Being really careful when referencing TV programmes. There are some really good factual TV programmes out there that genuinely inspire students to study a particular subject area, but avoiding references. I mean, at the University of South Wales, we've got courses in nursing and policing. We read lots of references to things like Holby City, Line of Duty. Please avoid any sort of fictional TV programmes, because that really doesn't demonstrate to us that you understand what it is to study that subject at university. Unfortunately, not every day on our professional policing course is like an episode of Line of Duty. Don't just list experiences, so expand on those experiences, that personal statement ABC. Don't refer to information that's covered elsewhere in your application. You're just wasting characters, you're just wasting space on your personal statement. We can get information about the school or college you attend, your age perhaps, your subject you're studying on another part of the form. Don't name the universities you're applying to. We can't see information about the other universities you've applied to, so don't give that information away in the personal statement. And I've mentioned this already, no need to exaggerate, no need to lie on a personal statement. Make sure it's all true and all things that you've actually done. And just very briefly, really, really important that you're aware that all personal statements, everyone on this call who submits a personal statement, your personal statement will be screened by the UCAS copycat database. The database stores every copy of personal statement that it scans, and it also has historical copies from the internet. If you Google personal statements, those copies all exist within copycat as well. Any similarity above 10% is flagged to UCAS. UCAS then contact you. They contact your school or college if you've applied via school or college, and they'll also contact the universities. And it's completely up to the universities. There's no one course of action. It's up to the universities how they respond. Some universities might say, okay, we're not thrilled about this, but you could submit another application, another personal statement, which is, to be fair, a headache that you don't need once you've already submitted a personal statement. Some universities, particularly competitive universities, particularly competitive courses, aren't going to accept another application from you. So don't do it. Make sure everything you submit is your own work. So it's a bit of a whistle stop of the personal statement. The deadline's in, so obviously the early deadline was the 15th of October, which is passed. We're talking today about the 26th of January deadline, which is next Wednesday. I should say that although that is the deadline, and that is the deadline for when all applications will have equal consideration, so will be considered within that certain time frame, it is true to say that some universities, some courses will accept applications after that deadline. I would encourage you to contact individual universities to check whether that is the case, but I would say that some universities are able to accept applications after that deadline. So if you really aren't able to make that deadline, it doesn't mean that you can't go to university in September. Okay, that's a really important point to emphasise this evening. In terms of the selection process, you've done all the hard work, you've submitted a fantastic personal statement, and the next step in the selection process might just be to receive an offer from your chosen universities, which is fantastic, or it might be that you need to attend an interview. You might need to complete an admissions test, and there'll also be an opportunity to attend applicant day. So as someone who's applied, an opportunity to revisit that university as someone who's made an application. Just very briefly around interviews and the types of interviews that you might expect if you are applying for courses that interview. Might be a face-to-face in-person interview, could be a telephone or a virtual interview. If you're applying for creative courses, art and design courses, that kind of thing, could be a face-to-face or a virtual interview where you'll be expected to talk about your portfolio. And for some courses, you might be invited to attend a group interview, and this could be a virtual interview or an in-person group interview. Just a couple of tips for you as you prepare for interviews if it's relevant. It's an opportunity absolutely for the university in this case to find out more about you, whether you're a suitable candidate, whether you deserve a place on the course. They're assessing your suitability. They want to see if you can succeed on that course, if they should offer you a place. But it's also absolutely a two-way process and an opportunity for you to find out more about the university. Don't forget that you might have applied to 5 universities, so you might be sort of thinking about 5 options, 3 options, 2 options, depending on what your UCAS application looks like. It's absolutely an opportunity for you to find out more and for you to decide whether that's the right course, the right university for you. In terms of preparing for interviews, it's an obvious one, but do your research, making sure that you understand the requirements of the course and what the university is about, that kind of thing. Reread your application. The person interviewing you or the people interviewing you are going to have a copy of your personal statement in front of them. So make sure you're familiar with it and what you've said and the kind of things that you might get asked. Prepare answers to common questions. You are going to be asked why you want to study that particular course. That shouldn't catch you out. They shouldn't put you on the spot. You can prepare a response to that before you even go into that interview room or log on to that interview, Teams call maybe if it's virtual. And obviously a good way to prepare for interviews is doing mock interviews, which a lot of school and colleges will organise for students who need them. And in terms of making a good impression, really obvious, but arriving on time, being prepared, dressing appropriately and being mindful of your body language. They sound really obvious, but you'd be surprised how many times people forget this through the nerves of attending an interview. And in terms of virtual interviews, which is a fairly new concept, I would say over the last couple of years, should treat it in the same way you would treat a face-to-face interview, so arriving on time, logging on time, dressing appropriately, making sure your background is tidy and professional, and really important, making sure you're not going to be interrupted mid-interview. In a face-to-face interview, if you're visiting a university, you wouldn't expect your pet to jump on the desk in front of your laptop and turn it off or turn you on mute or whatever. Making sure that you've got some space, you've got some peace and quiet to perform in that interview as you would if you're performing face-to-face. We are recording this session. I'm not going to go through these now because we haven't got enough time, but there's some information here about the kind of general questions you might get asked, questions around competencies, and then questions around situations and how you respond in different situations. So you're very welcome to access the recording after the session and go through those as well. And final point on interviews, please make sure you ask questions. I've done countless mock interviews, and my final question is always, have you got any questions for me? And I would say 9 times out of 10, it's no, I'm fine. Always make sure that you've got some questions prepared that you can ask the person who's interviewing you. It shows you can ask questions as well as answer them, and it's another opportunity to demonstrate your interest, your passion, the research that you've done into the course and the university. So after that process, if you've had to attend an interview or haven't attended an interview, universities will respond with offers, and they'll respond in one of 3 ways. They'll either make you a conditional offer. So yeah, come and study with us in September on the condition that you achieve certain grades or certain UCAS tariff points. Unconditional offers, so no conditions attached. Please come and study with us in September, regardless of the grades that you get. If you are fortunate enough to get an unconditional offer, I would encourage you to just consider that offer alongside all of your other offers, and don't just jump for the unconditional offer as a kind of easier option. It is important you consider them alongside all of the other things that we've talked about during this session. And then the final way that a university could respond is with a rejection, so with an unsuccessful. In terms of your application, you can access it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You'll be responding to offers online, your place will be confirmed online, and you'll be able to self-release during clearing online. So important that you realise that it's a very accessible system, and again, making sure you're checking that junk email folder and checking your UCAS hub regularly. In terms of responding then, so once the university's made their offers to you, it's over to you to decide where you want to go and you'll make those final decisions. So you'll need one firm acceptance, which is your first choice university. This is the university, providing you meet the requirements. If they've made you a conditional offer, that's the one you'll be going to. You need an insurance acceptance, which is a backup, a second choice university. To be a true insurance, a true backup, it should be asking for at least 1 grade lower than your firm choice. Okay, so it's your firm and insurance, your first and second choice. And then you decline all of your other offers. So you might have made 5 applications, then you'll be left with a first and a second choice and no others. I'll just mention UCAS Extra really briefly. It might be that none of you need to access this, but it's a second opportunity to make a university application essentially. Students who are eligible are students who haven't received any offers. They might have had 4 or 5 rejections. The student has decided to decline the offers they've had, so they might have changed their mind in terms of the universities, in terms of the course that they've applied for, so they've declined them, so they're not holding any offers, or they haven't applied at all. So it's open, UCAS Extra opens in February and closes in June. Vacancies are listed on the UCAS website and on university websites, and you make an application one at a time for UCAS Extra. Okay, it's certainly a second chance for students who perhaps things haven't quite gone to plan ahead of that January deadline. Student finance, again, I'm not going to talk in detail about this evening. Student finance applications open in the spring, usually March, sometimes towards the end of March, early April. All students are entitled to financial support with the cost of attending university. No one is expected to pay anything up front. There is support available for you all. I would really encourage you to investigate scholarship and bursary opportunities. Every university offers scholarships, every university offers bursaries. Now that you've got that short list of institutions that you're considering, it cuts down on your research. Get on the university websites, have a look at their student money pages. We're talking about thousands of pounds available to students and for a variety of criteria. So please have a look at what's available, and scholarships and bursaries do not have to be repaid. And in terms of repayment of student loan and student finance support, graduates have to earn over £27,295 before they repay a penny. If they're not earning that amount after graduation, they won't begin to repay. And when they do enter repayment, it's 9% of any earnings above that threshold. So repayments are very small every month that they're earning over that amount. And if we fast forward to results day or results time, so next summer, this summer rather, if things go well, if students achieve the grades that were required, then universities must confirm their place. If things don't go so well, then you've got a couple of options. So it could still be that the firm choice can accept them. So it depends on how many other people have got the right grades, and lots of different things go on behind the scenes ahead of results day. So it could still be that their firm choice is able to accept them. So the advice is always not to panic on results day, although I appreciate it's easier said than done. If they haven't achieved the grades and are unable to go to their firm choice institution, then that's when the insurance choice becomes an option for them, and the second choice that should be asking for at least one grade lower. And then there's the clearing process as well. Clearing used to have a much more sort of negative stigma around, the places, whatever was left for the students that were left in the system who perhaps hadn't got what they expected. In the last sort of 7 or 8 years, clearing has changed dramatically, with some very competitive universities, some very competitive courses available in clearing. Students who are eligible don't hold any offers. They might have declined their offer, so declined the offer from their firm choice at that point based on their results, or they haven't applied at all, have decided to wait until they receive the results before making their application. And in a similar way to Extra, you find a course on the UCAS website or the individual university websites, contact the university, and then the university reviews the applications, the grades received, and decides whether to make an offer or not. There's certainly lots of opportunities available to students in clearing if they haven't secured a place at university. And to finish off then, top tips ahead of the deadline next week and beyond. Making sure you're doing your research, keeping on top of what's happening, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about in terms of courses and universities. Appreciate that online activities don't always replace the in-person experience, but there are still a lot of online events and activities available, like the webinar this evening. So I'd encourage you to continue to engage with those sources of information. Don't wait until the deadline. I suppose easier said than done a week ahead of it, but always sort of getting that application in and then seeing what comes back. And obviously we've heard this evening that there's lots of other options and routes into university should that initial application not go to plan. And just making sure that you remember all your logins for UCAS, checking that junk email folder, and making sure all your contact details are correct so that universities can get in touch with you when they need to, if there's anything to discuss. And I mentioned open days really briefly as part of the presentation. At the University of South Wales, we're running an in-person open day on the 22nd of January, so this Saturday, and you can book your place via the URL on the screen now. And we'll also be running another open day on the 5th of March. This would be open to students thinking about university this September or next September or the September after. It's never too early to engage with that research and find out more about the universities that you might be interested in. I've left us about 10 minutes now for questions, so I'm going to stop sharing my slides and visit the chat box and go back to Mitesh if there's anything we need to pick up.
Rebecca, thanks very much for that. It was a very comprehensive presentation. I think you covered a lot. I haven't seen any questions pop up, so if anyone would like to ask any questions, please put them in the chat now. In the meantime, what was that link again for the open days? Why don't you just put it in the chat so it might be easier for people to copy?
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat now. I can see we've got a question, so I will.
Yeah.
There we go, there's the link. If I defer my place for a year, do I have to reapply? I'd encourage you, Taylor, to get in touch with the university and the course concerned, because most universities accept deferral, so you could apply this year and just defer. But it's worth checking with the individual course, because some courses, nursing is sometimes an example where they don't accept deferral. So you'd have to get in touch with the university to check that out. If they don't accept deferrals, you just have to make another application this September onwards from next September, if that makes sense. If you only receive one offer, would you have to make that your firm offer? Very good question. I would encourage you to only make your firm offer if that's the university that you want to go to. If you don't receive any other offers, it might be worth considering making an application via UCAS Extra. Or it might be worth making an application during the clearing period as well, looking at other options, doing that research and looking at other options that might be available to you. But I certainly wouldn't encourage you to make something your firm offer just because it was the only offer that you'd been made. Okay. Could you explain a bit more about joint honours, as I don't quite understand them? Yeah, absolutely, Francesco. So if you wanted to study at university, you've got the choice of studying a single honours, which is one subject. So for example, you might make an application to study biology. So it's a 3-year course, and then you graduate at the end with a BSc, so a Bachelor of Science in Biology. And often school and college students find it difficult to choose between two courses because they've got two favourite subjects. There might be an opportunity to combine those and do a joint honours. So what that would mean is, we'll take biology and chemistry as an example here. So you might want to study joint honours biology and chemistry. You'd spend 50% of your time, so it is literally split down the middle. So you'd spend 50% of your time studying biology, 50% of your time studying chemistry, and then at the end of the 3 years, you'd graduate with a BSc, so the Bachelor of Science in Biology and Chemistry. So it just enables students to keep those two course options, I suppose, rather than having to focus on one.
So, Rebecca, while we wait for some more questions, I actually picked up on a question. You mentioned that, you know, doing 2 business courses at 2 different universities might have very, very different course content. How, as a student, would I decide what's better for me?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'd always encourage students to read all of the detail because, like I said, it could be different module types. Different universities work with different companies, and some universities, such as my own university, the University of South Wales, offer sandwich degrees, nothing to do with sandwiches. It's doing a 4-year course and spending that 3rd year on a work placement, often a paid work placement, getting that work experience. I think it would depend entirely on what you wanted to get out of it. And obviously the course is the main focus for students. So that's often what students choose, is they focus on the course first and then see which universities offer it. But I think once you've chosen a course, if you're stuck between 2 universities, both offering business management, then I would encourage you to look at the bigger picture in terms of other opportunities, location of the university, clubs, even things like clubs and societies, the local area. So it gives you the full package, if you like, when you're choosing a course and a university. Then there's a question about adjustment. Yeah. That's a good one, Claire. I don't believe adjustment. You are right. I know it did appear on my slide. Apologies about that. You are right. I don't believe adjustment is happening this year. I think very small numbers of students were moving around via adjustment, and so I believe that adjustment isn't available this year. You're correct.
So again, while we wait for any more questions that come about, you mentioned a sandwich year where people go and work in industry. So typically, where do people go that, people that attend the University of South Wales, what kind of companies do they go work for in that sandwich year?
There's a real variety. We work with sort of over 200 employers, so it would depend on what the student wanted to get out of it. And obviously we've got business management, but we've also got more sort of specialist courses, I suppose, in sort of fashion, business and marketing and things like that. So the student we would support the student to find the placement that best suits them. So we work with companies such as sort of GE Aviation. You put me on the spot and I have to think of all these companies we work with. GE Aviation, and we worked with Microsoft in the past. So it really depends, and also it depends on whether the student wants to stay local to where, maybe local to the university or local to where they live. as to what company they might choose to work with. But we'd always encourage students, particularly students thinking about business courses, to consider that sandwich year option, because obviously it gives them that additional experience for a year of working with that company. And often we find that students make those connections with employers, make a good impression, we hope, make a good impression during that year. And then obviously they've only got a year left in university then. So there's an opportunity to make a good impression and perhaps find employment on graduation with that company then as well.
We've, oh, here we go. There's another question that just popped up.
Is there any leniency if you don't meet your required grades on results day, i.e. will the uni still accept you? It's absolutely on a case-by-case basis, and like I say, a lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes with universities ahead of results day and on results day. It depends entirely if students have got what grades the students have received and what grades other students have received that are attending that course as well. So I would say there is leniency. It could be that you haven't met your grades by 1 grade or maybe even 2 grades, and they could still accept you, but it will depend on a lot of other factors, and depends obviously on the university and the course as well. Do you charge for placement years? No, there's no charge to the students. We give students who are able to get reduced rate student finance support in their 3rd year as well, to support them with costs like travelling to placements and things like that. But like I say, they might get paid for that placement year as well, so they get an additional income as well.
So just in case anyone's got any last minute questions, do you want to just type in your email address that people can contact you on in case they want to get in touch?
Yeah, I'll do that now.
I think it appears as actual link, so it's actually easier on the chat.
And the email address there, you're very welcome. If you're a student, you're welcome to contact us on that email address. And if we've got any teachers or careers advisors on the call who are interested in delivering, interested in us delivering a session for your students or supporting them in any way, then please get in touch and we'd be more than happy to help with that.
We've got a few minutes left, so if anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask them now. But if there are none, I appreciate it's the evening and you might want to go and have dinner or, get on with your evening. So we'll give it another minute just in case. But otherwise, Rebecca, thank you very much.
Welcome.
And everyone on the call, thank you very much for taking the time out of your evening to attend. I hope you found it insightful.
Good luck with your applications as well. If you haven't submitted yet, still got some time. Good luck.
I think people are leaving, so we can end the webinar there. And thank you everyone. I hope to see you at our next one. We've got another one with this time with an employer, Deloitte, coming up in a couple of weeks. So if you want to join that, look out for that. Some of you might have signed up already.
Brilliant. Thanks all.
Thank you very much.
Bye.